All right, this video is mainly just going to be a vocab video focusing on what is called experimental design. So in a census, measurements or observations from the entire population are used. In a sample, measurements or observations from part of the population are used. So difference is the entire population versus part of the population. In an observational study, observations and measurements of individuals are conducted in a way that doesn't change the response or the variable being measured. Sorry for the typo. So, they're observing what they see or measuring what they have encountered, but nothing was imposed upon the individuals to change the response of the variable that's being measured. What that's different from is in an experiment, a treatment is deliberately imposed on the individuals in order to observe a possible change in the response of the variable being measured. I guess that was or. So the big thing here is we have observational is really just looking at measurements and recording what you see, whereas an experiment, we are imposing something upon the individuals in our study to see if there is a change to the variable that we're measuring. A lot of times this is going to be medical studies that you'll see the most commonly for experiments. We look at, they have a group that maybe gets what we're going to talk about next, a placebo or medicine that is not really a medicine. And then we get the group that has the medicine. So both groups think they're getting a medicine, and we observe at the end, whether or not there's a change based on the fact that one group got the placebo versus the other group got the actual treatment. So that's how an experiment is done. The placebo effect occurs when a subject receives no treatment, but incorrectly believes he or she is in fact receiving treatment and responds favorably. So they were on the placebo, but all of a sudden their pain has gotten better. So that is called the placebo effect, when they incorrectly think I'm getting the medicine and I feel better, or this is improved. A block is a group of individuals sharing common features that might affect their treatment. A lot of times if you read any medical experiments and how they're set up, they talk about those kind of blocks. They talk about, these are people who have high blood pressure, these are people who have diabetes, and these are people in different stages of their life that, those might block them into some common features. And so they have those listed usually in the beginning of their studies. A randomized block experiment is how individuals are first sorted into their blocks, and then a random process is used to assign each individual in the block to one of the treatments. A completely randomized experiment is one which a random process is used to assign each individual to one of the treatments. The control group receives a dummy treatment, enabling the researchers to control for the placebo effect, and then the experimental group will receive the treatment. The actual medication or whatever it is that they're imposing. A lurking variable is one for which no data has been collected, but that nevertheless has influence on other variables in the study. And two variables are considered confounded when the effects of one cannot be distinguished from the effects of the other. Randomization is used to assign individuals to two treatment groups. This helps prevent bias in selecting members for each group. And a couple other things, like I said, this section is all just definitions. There's not really any good examples that I had from my textbook on this. So a single blind study means that the individuals in the study do not know whether or not they are receiving the treatment or the placebo. A double blind study means that neither the individuals in the study or the observers know which subjects are receiving treatment. That tries to cut down on bias in both directions. Surveying is a common means to gather data about people. Some pitfalls of surveys are, which I have all these listed here. Sorry, it got listed twice. We don't need all of those listed 2 times. So we're just going to talk about the different types. So we have non-response, truthfulness of response, faulty recall, hidden bias, vague wording, interviewer influence, and voluntary response. So a non-response obviously would be if someone does not respond to the survey. So they don't respond to any of it. Or specific questions. Truthfulness of a response has to do with what if, someone lies intentionally to make themselves look better. It depends on what the questions are. They may not want to be shown in a light where they don't maybe look favorable. Faulty recall is when you think about how our minds work, essentially, because most humans have a hard time recalling things accurately, especially as the passage of time goes on. So faulty recall could be some reason that our survey may not be as good as we need it to be for gathering the data. A hidden bias. So when we think about hidden bias, we're looking at things like the order of the questions may lead people in a specific set of responses. They may change their responses depending on the order. How the question is asked, that could, be a hidden bias. And what I mean by how the question is asked is kind of how is it worded, that might lead them to a specific response. If your survey is a Likert scale, those where it's strongly disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree, or something like those types of scales, they may not accurately match up with how the respondent is feeling, or their experiences. Vague wording can be another thing that's a pitfall. Vague wording can be things like often, occasionally, seldom, words that are not easily measurable and may mean different things to different people. Interviewer influence, depending on a lot of factors, gender, ethnicity, level of authority, just different things in those regards, that might make you answer the questions differently, because of how the interviewer, even their tone, that could influence what you respond. And then voluntary response, when surveys are left as, respond, like the ones where they mail them out and you mail it back, essentially only people who are interested in what the survey is about is going to fill it out and actually return it. So anytime, like calling into a radio show, we have to be a listener of a radio show to call in, and you usually have to be interested in the topic that they're talking about, either strongly one way or the other. So those are voluntary responses, and so they don't represent the entire population. All right. Like I said, there's no real examples on this one. There's just a lot of vocabulary in that experimental design section. So I hope this helps you distinguish between some of those features.